Next, we move on to our Muppet of the month, and I would be amazed if this was for the first time that we've highlighted this particular news outlet as a source, a repository for Muppetry. But this is nonetheless a headline from the the Daily Mail, along the lines of this. Now, it bears reading the whole thing out, so bear with me. Incredible reconstruction reveals the face of toothless Iron Age elder Hilda the Druid, who died in Neolithic Scotland 1,500 years ago. Now, we should just unpack that a little bit. So, druids.
Too blooming right, we should.
Druids are.
There's an entire PhD thesis about this.
I think there is. Again, time travel may well be included. I mean, we had the story of the time traveling Spitfire last month, so I mean, who knows? But so druids are, if they existed at all, in the way that they're often ascribed to have existed in popular culture, are Iron Age. So they come from 2,000 to 2,500 years ago, give or take thereabouts. They're mentioned in the writings of Julius Caesar. Neolithic Scotland, what, 5,000-6,000 years ago?
Earlier? At least 1,000 years earlier?
At least 1,000, if not 2 or 3.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. I'm underestimating that badly. Yeah.
And all of that is definitely not 1,500 years ago.
No, even my maths can cope with that one.
I think so, and it's just unfortunate because, we should really highlight here, it is the newspaper and possibly the press office that we're highlighting here as being Muppets, because it's unfortunate that the person involved in this research is so prominently featured. And so the first bullet point subheadline in the Daily Mail's article here is Karen Fleming from the University of Dundee having recreated the Iron Age woman's face using modern methods. We're not saying remotely that Karen Fleming is a Muppet here. This is all about the presentation and, frankly, the ongoing historical illiteracy of members of the press in presenting what actually is a very interesting archaeological reconstruction, but presenting it in a unnuanced way. Because when we look at the University of Dundee, I think the press release about this, it very specifically talks about this being one of Scotland's oldest, well, I just say druids, but that's in reference to the description from 1833. So at a time when people talked about druidic remains, when they were referring to Bronze Age or Neolithic barrows and stone circles, this kind of thing. So that they're carrying on a nickname that's stuck with these remains. But actually, Karen herself says that Hilda was a fascinating character to recreate. It's clear from the skull she was toothless before she died, which isn't too surprising considering the diet of folk back then. But it's impressive how long she lived. A female's life expectancy at the time was roughly 31 years, probably due to things like complications linked with childbirth, etc. That's my insert, incidentally, there. But she goes on to say, it is now thought that living longer during the Iron Age is indicative of a privileged background. It's impossible to know for sure when she died, because we're unable to carbon date the skull. Assuming the information in the journal of 1833 is correct, however, Hilda passed away between 55 BC and 400 AD. She seems to be quite sensible in how she's talking about this, but it's a translation from research to press office to Daily Mail headline that just, in this case, is just so egregious, because I don't think even your standard article, and they say your standard argument that an article is designed to sell newspapers actually stands up here, because this is just someone who doesn't know what they're writing about. You can fine, use the word druid if you have to, but druid, Neolithic, 1,500 years ago, it's ignorance, isn't it? Surely.
Yeah, I was quite surprised. I mean, we've talked about journalism before, which is basically recycling a journalist on a newspaper with limited time and having to produce so many clickbait articles for the website and the paper per day. Basically recycles a press release. What's interesting about this one is that, as you say, the press release for these is relatively straightforward and relatively factual. and relatively nuanced.
Yeah.
But the mail, for all intents and purposes, has gone off on one.
Yes.
The word Neolithic's nowhere there. Someone clear. Why?
Well, actually, yeah.
It's
Sorry.
not.
I'm just gonna do a word search on the press release. Neolithic. Yeah, it's not in there. So someone's lifted
Exactly.
that from somewhere. Goodness knows how.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is an interesting thing as well here that again, if you know anything about science, you should go, okay, well, this is hyperbole. Hilda was
Yeah.
recreated according to the press release from an ancient skull held in University of Edinburgh's Anatomical Museum, and is described as one of the 6 quote Druids of the Hebrides skulls, end quotes, presented to the Phrenological Society of Edinburgh in 1833. Obviously, phrenology being a completely debunked
And that
pseudoscience. Yeah.
really should ring alarm bells,
Yeah.
because that simple. Anyone reading this who knows anything about the subject, or wanted to Google it,
Hmm. Hmm.
would know that this is nothing to do with the Neolithic, but the mention of phrenology brings you immediately onto race science and discredited branches of race science.
Yeah, or the idea that the shape of your head is linked to your likelihood of being a criminal, for example. You know. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
And so this is just it's words fail me. Again, you go back to the press release, and the second half of it is basically why they put it out. They're selling their MSc, the Master of Science in Forensic Art and Facial Identification, because the last part of the press release is about the course, and links to the course web pages,
which is fine. That's to be expected.
Yeah,
but
universities sell themselves in the marketplace and try and attract students. That's fine.
But if I would be exasperated to think that my module, if I was teaching this module, was attached to this sort of a headline. Incidentally, if you look up Joe Pinkston, the journalist behind this, so his Twitter account, he looks, to my increasingly old eyes, ridiculously young. He's probably like 21 or something. Despicable.
And you're getting old.
I'm getting an old man. Old. Old. But he's the reason why I look this up, though, is not to criticise his age. You can be a great writer no matter how old you are. But specifically, it's about his description. He's described as the science and technology reporter for the Mail Online. He should be somewhat scientifically literate. He should know phrenology is nonsense. He should know, therefore, that how phrenologists describe these remains is subject to a query. And the fact that
he should know the basics of the 3-age system, and that Druids are connected with the Iron Age, and there's the Bronze Age between them and the Neolithic.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I mean, to be fair, there was a little bit of wriggle room in the press release, in so much as there is word verbatim here. You have the sentence unqualified. A University of Dundee student has revealed the face of one of Scotland's oldest druids. That's unfortunate. So if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to just lift that and run with it. But Karen's own quotes
writing that as
are
an
very
archaeologist,
specific.
and again, this is where we get back to that thing we've talked about before, which is archaeologists need to. Hopefully, the press office went to the student concerned, went to Karen Fleming, and said, we want to do a press release about your piece. This is what we've written so far. What do you think? Now, okay, if you're a student, it's very difficult to say no to the university press office, but I've certainly been in situations where I've basically insisted on having input to what gets published.
Yeah. And they feel they need to sexy it up and all that.
So put the word druid in. Okay, they might think, okay, we want clickbait. We use the word druid because that will get more clicks than we'll say one of Scotland's earliest women, or something like that. One of Scotland's Iron Age women.
But actually, as Karen very specifically says here, you could have used phrases like Iron Age elder, Even she even throws in the word Celtic elder. Those are just as clickbaitable as Druid.
Scotland's oldest Fanny.
Yeah, exactly. And incidentally, it's probably worthwhile saying the reconstruction is fascinating. A really interesting face that this person's got, and the toothless sort of, sort of. It's like someone without their false teeth in, I guess you might say.
And in fact, the portrait shot, the double portrait shot they've used, it's a
face to face,
post on the side, face to face, is lovely.
Yeah,
it's they're almost like facing off to each other.
Yeah. But in that sense, it really it just highlights that the Muppets here. Is the moment that the expert lets go of that information.
It's Muppetized.
It's Muppetized and hung out for all to see. I've also I'm going to link below to the Facebook post that we did of this, because the reactions that people had on the Archaeology page were priceless. There was 60 odd responses where people sharing basically just animated GIF responses of people shaking their heads. There's one of Abraham Lincoln with a boombox on his shoulder. It says, "It's
the one with the cat putting its fingers over its face."
I would be amazed if there wasn't. They're not all fully loading for me today. But it's Muppetry. It's Muppetry, and it's very unfortunate. Hopefully, though,
and so good viewer. The lesson here is write your own press release and then get the press office to put it out. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, and
they'll help you, but basically don't let them do it for you.
No, don't. Well, no, never let them do it for you. Exactly. But also, I mean, just to end on a sort of a slightly serious point here as well.
Yeah.
I think this adds more evidence for the prosecution, in so much as I really truly believe that journalists need to. And I don't think this is too strong a word. They need to have some form of shame when it comes to being so bad at basic translation of press releases. Even if they're not doing their own, I'm not saying an investigative journalist, because normally those people have to stack up what they're writing and what they're saying in a very particular, careful way that is legally sound. But if you are a journalist, as you say, if you're churning out these stories, there should be some intellectual weight behind what you're doing. There should be some repercussion for just blurting out horse shit, basically. And in this instance, it doesn't seem as though he's had many repercussions. I can't. There's nothing really on the Twitter feed that indicates that. I can't see any. There's no attachment to the article, any sort of amendment, and that's a shame. I really do. I can't stress this enough. I'm going to continue this examination and this, broadly speaking, this campaign to criticise specifically scientific illiteracy by self-described scientific journalists or people who are covering humanities and sciences. They need to know what they're looking at. I mean, so I know I'm on the verge of ranting here, but. What do you think? I know that you tend to have a bit more sympathy.
Okay. Yeah, I have a certain amount of sympathy. I do and I don't. Journalists on any form of traditional media, print, broadcast, are under huge amounts of pressure these days. There are very few organisations now, and even the ones that have specialist reporters, like the BBC, have fewer than they used to. Where a newspaper like the Guardian or the Independent might have once had an archaeological correspondent or a heritage on the staff, they'll now use freelancers, or they'll use people with a much more a wider brief, as for example a culture correspondent. So in this case, you've got somebody who's science and what was the full title? It was science and it was a wide brief, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was science and
computers.
I just clicked away from it. Science and technology. There you go.
Science and technology. Yeah. That is a huge brief.
Yeah.
It's everything from Cambridge Analytica and the data scandal to something like this. Yeah. Now, you may well have a degree in computer science. You may well have a degree in a humanity, or whatever, or whatever. We don't know, but it is a huge brief to cover. what is unforgivable though is if you're on territory that you're not sure of, and if you're going to insert something, do the basic research. It only would have taken a few minutes on Google and Wikipedia. You know, it wouldn't have been difficult to get that to omit such an egregious error.
And
you know,
yeah, and specifically, even if there's one thing that I would change about the article, it would be the inclusion of the word Neolithic. You know, even though we've gone off on one about Druids, just you should just know, you should be able to find out when the Neolithic was, because it wasn't in the press release, and he's just chucked it into the article. And actually, now I'm getting more angry than just thinking it's a Muppet. It's just really annoying. So maybe we should move on from this particular instance of Muppetry. But
possibly should. I mean,
hopefully you learn something.
Right. I've just, while in the time it's taken you to say that sentence, I've typed in historic time period Scotland into a certain search engine beginning with G. The first entry coming up: ancient Scotland, Neolithic Scotland. 12,000 BC to 2,750 BC.
There you go.
Beaker period and Bronze Age, down the list.
Yeah.
That's how long it would have taken to check.
Yeah. So, Muppet.
Yes.
Muppet. Again, hard hat on.
I rest my case, my lad.
I doff my hard hat. Okay. Moving on. I think we've given him enough of a kicking.